Hi, everyone. Welcome to Classics You Slept Through, the book podcast where we read and discuss classic literature. I'm your host, Kyle Davis, along with a girl who spends hours setting and resetting her gemstones into their case, my sister, Meredith. How's it going, Mer?
It's going great. Did you know Nana was like a gemologist person? And that she had to work for a diamond dealer?
Yes, something in Delaware long ago. I had that written down at some point. I had not recalled that until you mentioned it, though.
Maybe she spent hours and hours resetting and setting people's gems.
She may have. Well, speaking of gems, we are going to get into some hobbies, collections, and interests here in this section of Dorian Gray. So we've got chapters 11 through 14 today, and just as a quick preview on how Wilde sort of has what I kind of think of as rumination chapters, sort of his deep discussion chapters, and then plot chapters, where the story of Dorian and friends kind of moves along. We start off in chapter 11. We're going to have a deep discussion chapter, and then 12, 13, and 14 are going to move a little quicker with plot happenings chapter.
What a plot it is.
It is. So at the beginning of chapter 11, Gaius Baltar lays his head on the table and lifts it up, and we have jumped a few years forward. Dorian now has been 4 years doing things. So our first 10 chapters, we decided happened in a span of 2-ish months.
Yeah.
Right? And now we've leapt forward. We learn in this chapter, I think, about 7 years. Because
it opens with
25.
Just years. For years.
Right. It says 4 years, but Dorian's turning 25 in this chapter.
Oh.
Towards the end.
Yeah. And for listeners, it's FOR years, not FOUR years.
Correct. Yes. 4 years. So Dorian's turning 25 at the end of this chapter. So we think about 7 years have occurred here in this chapter. So now we start off with Dorian had gotten this book, this yellow book from his friend Henry, and had become obsessed with it. And I looked this up. Do you know what a yellow book is, Meredith? Why it's significant that the cover was yellow when Dorian got it?
No. I thought maybe I did, and I tried to come up with something, but no.
No? All right. Obscenity. So this was, if you have a memory.
Find the good ones.
Yeah, exactly. So if you remember bookstores, I don't know if you remember bookstores. We used to have those. But you would go into the mall bookstore, and it'd be like a Walden Books or B. Dalton or something, and you would go to the magazine shelf, and you'd be looking at magazines. But there'd always be these magazines in black cellophane up on the top
back.
shelf. Right. And so that was your Playboys, your Penthouses. Well, this in England in the 1880s that we are, yellow books, these sort of obscene books, generally from Paris, from France, would be published, but in these yellow wrappers.
Oh, so like not the cover, but like a wrapper.
Right.
You could take it off. You wouldn't have to like sit at the bus stop or the not the bus stop.
I suppose you would keep the yellow wrapper on. You don't want, or maybe you would just keep it in your house. But you don't want people to know.
Well, you wouldn't want people to know that. Like I'm imagining them like sitting on a park bench with a bright yellow book in your hand, and everybody knows. Like you wouldn't leaf through a nudie magazine on a park. Well, maybe it would. I don't know.
Perhaps. I was flying once, and there was a Japanese guy 2 or 3 rows ahead of me, and he was just flipping through his magazine, sit there on the plane. He was just going for it.
He must have been under the influence of this same Parisian novel that Dorian was, where he just accepts his debauchery and obscenities or whatever.
Right. So a yellow book. These were obscene books that were wrapped in a covering, and they literature scholars, they believe that the book that Dorian was reading was a book by, I'll probably completely mispronounce this, but Joris Karl Husemann. His book A Remor from 1884.
Okay.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, when Oscar Wilde was arrested in 1895, it was rumored that he was carrying a yellow-bound book with him.
Ooh. Not this particular one, but just a yellow-bound book.
Just a yellow book, right. There's speculation of what that book was, but anyway, so apparently these things existed, and this is what's corrupting or helping to hasten the corruption of young Dorian. So we can assume that this is a pretty decadent and considered for the time blasphemous book that he's reading. And he wants to emulate the hero of this novel, who apparently goes through and is doing all the manner of, parading the sins, as Dorian had read earlier, the sins of the world parading before him as he reads the book. We get in this chapter, so this is not a narrative chapter, this is sort of a descriptive chapter. And this chapter kind of goes through what Dorian's been doing the last 7 years, kind of sums it up. And he has sort of a deep delving personality. So basically what Dorian's been doing is kind of getting into hobbies, shall we say. He's been kind of finding something he likes and like really figuring it out and just, I suppose, sucking all of the passion out of it, and then he moves on to the next thing. So there are large sections of he gets into perfumes, he learns how to make perfume, he gets into gems, he, gets into sort of, I suppose, tailoring, because he gets these dresses and these costumes just to be studded with gems and things. He gets very into music for a while, throwing these amazing parties with just the best musicians and all the newest, wildest music. He's just getting into it all. He collects musical instruments, and there's these long paragraphs that were just a joy for me to read, I'll have to say, for the listeners out there, of just names of things. This is sort of the Ready Player One style of writing, where we're just going to list all of the references. And a lot of these instruments, I tried to look a lot of them up. A lot of the things in this chapter that Dorian kind of gets into and describes, the only references I could find on Google were to the Picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
So I don't know if these were known things back then or what.
Oscar Wilde's like Shakespeare's making up his own words, his own
he could be
things, and then
I think in this section we have a lot of examples of that, where I would read something and I'd be like, well, what is this that Wilde is referring to? And trying to find it, the only thing it self-references back to itself.
Mm-hmm. Similar thing happened when we get into the chapters where there was a bunch of French. I was like, oh, I bet there's a translation of this poem somewhere. And it was like, in Picture of Dorian Gray. I was like, but wait, where's
did Wilde write these poems himself?
I don't think so. I just think
these minor poets that were lost to time, maybe?
Or it's just not English, just not like British English popular, more like a seriously like Parisian and French or Italian or whatever it was. Like it wasn't disseminated enough. It's like
it was just cool. It was trendy among the rich set.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you. He gets into religion. Like he's fascinated. He doesn't want to believe religion, but he's fascinated by just the clothing and the ceremony, and he really gets into that.
Ecclesiastical vestments.
Yes. A lot of good words in there
for ecclesiastical vestments. Put that on your Tinder profile, folks.
Hey, everybody's got their own niche, right? He gets into embroideries and textiles.
Like just you collecting them or doing them? Like, is he embroidering?
I don't know. I don't recall. if
He
he's
just
doing it
likes them
himself. But yeah,
and collecting
but
them.
but I kind of was feeling for Dorian in this section because I have a personality where I get interested in things and I want to go deep and know like everything about it. And then, 6 weeks later I'll get into something else and forget about what I was studying before.
Well,
Anyway.
I find it interesting that it says like everything that he collected, all of those treasures he put in his house, and they were to help him forget. They were to help him escape. So all of this is to avoid investigating his own person. Like,
Yes.
right? It's so he doesn't think on the other things, the hideous painted thing, you know?
Right. He's burying his fear and guilt in things so he can forget the picture. So the picture's really bugging him because it's showing him what he's doing. So not only does he get into this stuff, but he gets into sort of seedier things as well. He's going down to the docks a lot. And he's hitting up the Blue Gate Fields.
Blue Gate Fields, which you looked
Yes.
up, right?
Which I looked up, and it just references back to Dorian Gray, basically. But they were slums in London, down by the docks, full of opium dens and brothels. So he'll go down there, and it says he goes down there for days at a time.
Days.
So he just goes down there and gets wasted, hanging out with the prostitutes, and then he'll eventually, come back.
Get bored or sore.
Get bored, and kind of clean himself up a little bit. He'll get sober for a few days.
God.
And, but what's interesting, and, this has been years, people are starting to notice. So people it's been 7 years, so people are beginning to notice he's not aging. And so I found it interesting that, what the physics of this picture are. Not only are they taking on his sins, it's also aging for him.
Right. Which is why he decided to sin in the first place. Because he was like, the picture's going to get ugly and disgusting with age anyway. Why not? What's the point of being good if it's just going to get ugly anyway? Which
Just
I didn't
make it
understand.
worse.
Didn't understand, man. I was like, you could be good and beautiful, but I guess you have the
But his
opportunity.
beauty covers, right? Because his beauty covers it.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're beautiful, then you're.
Now I wonder, is this still a widely held belief? Like, I get it. Like, if you do bad things like meth, you'll affect your appearance. But like, everyone seems to really believe, all these scandals and rumors about him couldn't possibly be true because he's so beautiful. Like, if he did these things, it would show. And it's hard for people who like aren't actively involved in his debauchery to believe that this is really to believe the rumors and the scandals, but there's so many that they can't. It's hard not to believe it, but they just keep remarking on his beauty and his
loneliness.
Yeah, his. Now I assume maybe he's in like opium dens and whatnot. Perhaps also it doesn't. Does it say? Oh, he is.
He is. Yeah.
Okay, so he is doing drugs too.
But he does later on in one of our later chapters. There's a reference to poppies.
Okay.
Later on, so he's hitting it. And we also learn a little bit later on, he's going down in disguise. So it's not like he's immediately recognizable as rich guy Lord Dorian. He is going down in disguise and doing this, but people know.
One of the things I thought was interesting about this chapter, and I'm not sure what of all the big, huge, thick paragraphs of this chapter, I didn't write down where it happens in the chapter. But it says, as he looked back upon man moving through history, he was haunted by a feeling of loss. So much had been surrendered, and to such little purpose. There had been mad will for rejections, monstrous forms of self-torture and self-denial, whose origin was fear, and whose result was a degradation of infinitely more terrible than that fancied degradation from which, in their ignorance, they had sought to escape. Nature in her wonderful irony driving out the Okay.
Incorrect.
Anchorite. There we go. To feed with the wild animals, the desert. To feed with the wild animals of the desert. Oh, see, you think I would read aloud often and I could do it well. And giving to them the hermit beasts of the field. Anyway, he feels a loss for everybody else in the world throughout history who isn't living like him, who isn't giving over to what he thinks is some sort of hedonism. And he is like, so much was surrendered. And for what? Because they were worried about like, I guess, religious repercussions, or they were worried about scandal, or worried about rumors, or worried about being immoral. Ugh, such self-torture and self-denial, which on one hand, in some instances, I could see that making sense. He is the extreme, though. Like, he wants to allow himself all things and have no repercussions and feels bad that the rest of the world hasn't done this throughout time. So I just thought it was really interesting that he feels bad for everyone who doesn't get to live like him, despite the fact that it's, as we'll see, it's not as wonderful as he thinks it is at this point.
Right. So I'll be interested when we get through this book to see what is Wilde actually trying to say, because through Dorian, he is positing that there is, sort of the moral relativism, right? Like there's no higher moral standard that we all sort of hold to. And he, here he explicitly says that manners are more important than morals, because you can overcome a personal failing, but a societal failure is inexcusable. Dorian is still holding parties, and he's still part of society, so that you could say morality is generated amongst ourselves, like it's a self-created thing, right? So Dorian doesn't have, a higher power or a higher moral code that he ascribes to that holds his behavior in check, but it's the linked societal behavior of all the other people that is bringing it together, right?
I think so.
That's the only check on his behavior.
I mean, he has some sort of, like, it's not like he doesn't think that they're wrong. He knows they're wrong, and he's delighting in their wrongness by watching his picture change. And he's delighting in the past that he gets. Although, is he delighting in it? Because he's trying to forget everything by fully immersing himself in these weird hobbies in the collections that he's getting. So he isn't allowing himself to even think about the things that he's doing. He's living really, I think he says at some point, like in the true moment, like just if I feel like doing something in this exact moment, I'm going to do it, and my picture will bear the brunt of it. But I don't think he's fully unaffected. And I think that perhaps there's something in it. Wilde is saying that as long as you adhere to some societal thing and you don't push that too far, you can, even having scandal with, like, come along with your name, actually can elevate you in society to a point. If you throw these parties and you're rich and you're beautiful, you can get a pass because now you're also interesting. But that, I think that only goes so far, at least for Dorian.
Right. I mean, they hate Americans in this book, so Dorian's not getting elected president. Well, he's not born in America anyway, but but I think if you, not to make it too modern here, but there's definitely truth to that, right? I mean, look at scandals that sink politicians 50, 100 years ago. You just brush it off. I mean, it's nothing matters now. Anyone can do anything, and as long as you have the right letter after your name in certain parts of the country, you get elected.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that goes for both sides.
Yeah.
That's both sides of the aisle, obviously. Well, I think what you're hitting on here, that it's not affecting Dorian, we kind of get a peek at it a little later, which I think, Dorian has showed this propensity before. After Sybil Vane kills herself, the next day he's just like, oh, was that last night? I don't even seems so long ago. He truly does live in the moment, I think, in so much as he almost has no memory. He has no guilt. He has no
He won't allow himself.
Right. But I don't think he has any propensity for it. So we'll find in a little bit. I think the picture even takes guilt on for him.
Interesting.
And memory. So now we're getting to 12. We see, again, Dorian has no remorse over what's happening, even though we've just said that society is sort of the one thing, like societal sins are unforgivable. I think Dorian's even pressing into that a little bit. Because as we get into chapter 12 here, we learn sort of through other characters what Dorian's been up to. So now we have a second time jump. Now we've jumped 13 more years because Dorian is turning 38 now. Which at this point, if he still looks 18, this is really getting weird. Like people, I mean, there's no way around at this point. He's drinking baby's blood or something.
They definitely think he's a vampire.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. Exactly. Especially, with Bram Stoker's book coming out at some point.
Yes, exactly. They're gonna know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Like, oh, remember that guy? So he's turning 38 and he's coming home one night and he runs into Basil on the street. Basil's actually coming from Dorian's house and he was gonna basically go say goodbye. He's going to Paris. He hasn't seen Dorian in a very long time, but he's gonna go paint in Paris for 6 months, and he wanted to talk to Dorian before he left. And so Dorian says, come on in. So they go in, and we have this idea. It says that sin shapes you and it writes its lines across you. Mm-hmm. So, the quote from the book says, sin is a thing that writes itself across a man's face. It cannot be concealed. So Basil has, for years, been hearing these rumors about Dorian, and he kind of wants to confirm them. He can't believe them because he looks at Dorian, and so Basil has this belief that you can't conceal sin, right? It's going to write itself on your face. And he looks at Dorian, and he's like, but you just look, you're beautiful, you're perfect, you're this thing. But now Basil has this second conflicting idea, because he says, you can judge a man by the effect that he has on his friends. Mm-hmm. And so Basil kind of goes through this litany of, why does, Lord so-and-so get up and leave the club when you come in? And what about this guy that you were friends with and now he's been ruined? And what about this person over here? And what about... So, he sees all of this, and, he really... Basil, he wants the best for Dorian. He loves him. He loves this idea of Dorian Gray. Still, after all of these years, it's been 2 decades, right? Since Basil first painted this picture, and he fell in love with him.
Yeah,
he's 38 now.
Sybil Vane was the first in his wake. Like, she isn't the only one who we get from this who committed suicide because of Dorian.
Yes.
So he's really got this decade of what do you want to call it? Tragedy or catastrophe in his wake because of his licentious behavior.
Right. So Basil makes some comment about seeing Dorian's soul.
Basil.
And so now Dorian is like, I think maybe he does carry a little guilt because he wants to unburden himself somewhat, perhaps. So he wants to show Basil the portrait. He wants to show him the soul. And he says, I've got a secret. Let me show you.
Now you shall look it in the face to face. Look on it face to face. God, I can't even say it now. Do you know how many times I re-recorded that line? Oh, now you shall look on it face to face.
Yeah, he says, Basil, there's a way for you to see my soul. And he goes, what are you talking about, Dorian? This is madness,
Blasphemous. Not just madness, blasphemous.
But I thought this was interesting. Dorian, this is an interesting point, and kind of going into what we were talking about just a minute ago about the sin making someone more interesting. Dorian says that if Basil's believed, he's like, I'll show you my secret, you can tell everybody, whatever. He says, but, if you tell people my secret, they're only going to like me more.
I don't know if that's true, Dorian.
He'd certainly be more interesting, wouldn't he?
Well, I did all these horrible things to everyone. Everything you know is true. But I get to stay beautiful because I have a magic painting.
Well,
like,
yes,
I don't know.
How interesting. You wouldn't find someone that, if you knew someone with a magic painting, you wouldn't find that person interesting and want to like.
If it stopped there, I mean, if he had a magic painting and that was it, not he had a magic painting and people kill themselves and he debauches people and who knows what he does.
This is true. This is true.
I just want to see the eyes follow me as I walk. Like,
Yes.
I don't want anyone to die.
So that's basically it. That what happens in 12. Just a couple of minor things. I found it interesting that earlier in the book, when Victor was going in and out, Dorian was very suspicious of him, that he was going to find out about this picture. So he's fired Victor and he's replaced him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Victor wanted nothing to do with the picture.
Victor didn't care. He's just, man, I just want to like get paid on Friday and
the help does not care what you do.
No, they absolutely do not.
Like he's like, oh, did you know Master Dorian put a painting in the attic and put a sheet over it? Like nobody cares, Dorian. Shut up.
Right, exactly. We don't find out what happened to Mrs. Leaf. He doesn't mention her. I don't know. I wonder if she's still around.
I find it interesting that Dorian would go up to the room and just study the painting. Like he was so fascinated by the changes, and every time he did something, he would like go look at it. And he considers it, he says, I write in my diary, what does he say? I keep a diary of my life from day to day, and it never leaves the room in which it is written. And you will not have to read long.
I mean, I guess it's kind of interesting. Like he could go and look at it and say, oh yes, when that crag or that scowl appeared, I remember that's when I did, X, Y, or Z. And because he seems to have no memory, so maybe this is the only way he remembers what he's done.
He won't allow himself to remember. He like pushes. I don't think he has no memory. Right?
He certainly has no guilt over it.
Well.
Right? No conscience.
Well, if you don't think about it, then how can you have guilt or conscience? If you literally don't allow yourself to think about it.
Right. I think Dorian, so he's simultaneously repulsed by the picture and intrigued and fascinated by it. It's almost like the Yellow Book, right? When he first read the Yellow Book, he didn't say he liked it.
No, he was fascinated
by it. So the picture almost is becoming his Yellow Book in a way. He hates the picture. He's disgusted by it, and yet he still goes to look at it. And he's fascinated by it. And
the book, even though he becomes obsessed with it, I don't think it ever mentions he enjoys it or likes it. It does say at the end he had been poisoned by it.
Right.
And because of the book, I think it's the next sentence, I think, because of the book, it means that it says there were moments when he looked on evil simply as a mode through which he could realize his conception of the beautiful, which is like, what?
Yeah, let's parse that out. I'm not smart enough to quite understand that on face value.
Looked at evil simply as a mode through which he could realize his conception of the beautiful.
Is it that he has to experience the most evil, disgusting things so that he can put it in contrast to know that this thing over here is really beautiful?
Interesting. Or maybe the things of the world that people call evil, he has to experience or wants to experience in order to decide if they fit his conception of beautiful. So, I mean, so I mentioned this book, The Narrow Road to the Deep North, and the author's Richard Flanagan. I remember that now. And this character that I mentioned before, the evil, quote unquote, evil character that I felt disturbed because I also enjoy poetry and he had this affinity for poetry. There's a section when this character who's obsessed with beheading POWs, like sword and everything, like just doing some kind of clean cut thing. The way it's described and the color of like the blood and the sword, it is described like some kind of beautiful painting. And it's another moment in the book where I'm like, this is disturbing, but it's a window into this character's psyche, because it's not like the omniscient voice is saying like this is just true, it's beautiful. It's through that character's eyes that this is why he like so adores doing this, that he finds, I guess, beauty and poetry in it. Maybe that's kind of similar, like he's looking at these evil things of the world and maybe they're not, maybe they're not so different from the things that we find beautiful, or maybe vanity in and of itself. I mean, it's definitely saying something about vanity in general. The whole story is.
Well, he must find, I think you're right. I think he must find some beauty or some value in it, because it's not like he goes down to the opium den to check out opium, try it, and then be like, okay, now I know what opium's like. Like, he keeps going down there.
I think he might be addicted to drugs, Kyle.
Well, that could...
He just keeps going. No.
He just keeps going. I wonder, though, could he get addicted, or would the painting take that? Maybe he's trying to get addicted, and he's like, no matter how much I do, like, I can't... Well, I mean, he obviously gets high because he's down there for a while, but maybe he can't... The picture takes away something that he can't get, so he has to continually go.
That's interesting. Because the picture obviously takes away all the bad things. Like anything you do, the bad aftermath, the consequence, the picture takes on.
Right.
Right? So I think that it would follow that perhaps that might be true. So I don't think the picture moves, but like it's aging. It's got the meth teeth, if he were doing meth, Sure. It's got the terrible complexion and the sores and whatnot. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, now we get into chapter 13, which is a very short chapter, but they go up to the room at the top of the house to see Dorian's soul. And I found this interesting. Basil doesn't open the curtain. He's like, He won't. So Dorian does it for him, opens the curtain. He sees this horrible painting, and at first he doesn't think he's like, what is this? This is terrible. He can kind of see the likeness of Dorian in there. It's not until he sees his own signature at the bottom that he's like, wait, this is my picture. I painted this. So he starts to think, was there something bad in the paint? Is this decaying? But then he realizes, like, it's fundamentally altered. Like, it's not just decaying paint.
Nothing has changed. Like,
right.
If you were to touch the canvas, nothing has been added or changed or corrupted. It's from the inside.
Right. So the image has fundamentally changed. So now he knows that the rumors are true, and he's sorry, and he's ashamed that he's ever worshipped Dorian. This has got to be like a heart-wrenching moment for Basil.
I know. Poor Basil takes it on himself. He's like, Christ, what a thing I must have worshipped. It has the eyes of a devil. Like, he's like, he blames himself.
Right.
Then Dorian says this great line, which then had me thinking, each of us has heaven and hell in him, Basil.
Yeah.
Maybe the propensity or the ability or the
propensity for good and for evil.
Yeah.
Right?
Make our choices, Dorian.
Exactly. War against our two natures, right? So he knows it's true. He implores Dorian to pray. Obviously, neither of them are very religious, but he's like, what we were taught in our youth. Let's pray, Dorian.
They're trying so hard.
They really are.
They're like, what's that prayer? What's it say? Maybe we can figure it out. We'll put a bunch of stuff together. They're like, God is good. God is great. Forgive us our trespasses, our daily bread.
And so Dorian, he's sad at this point, and it says it's too late. And Basil says to Dorian, you've done enough evil in your life, but old Dorian, he's got one more good act of evil ready to go. He realizes, so he sees a knife conveniently still sitting on a chest. Basil sits down and is like in awe, shock, and just kind of head in his hands kind of thing. And Dorian just goes over and kills him. Just cuts his... stabs behind the ear, cuts the veins, and
stabs him in the neck and head.
Yes.
That's brutal.
Very brutal.
Poor Basil. He didn't deserve that.
Poor Basil. He was just coming to see how his buddy Dorian was doing and to check on him. It's a nice thing. So that is chapter 13. So Dorian, he kills Basil and realizes a few things. Basil's coat is still downstairs. Got to get rid of that. And this is where we learn that Dorian has disguises because he's got a secret compartment in his room that he hides his own disguises in. And he kind of creeps out and he listens and the house is quiet. So he goes outside and then bangs on the door, wakes up his servant, says, "Man, I forgot my key. Thanks for letting me in. Anybody stop by?" He's like, "No, sir, just Mr. Hallward, but he left about 11. And Dorian thinks, score.
Yep.
No witnesses.
Oh, he's gone off to Paris, has he?
Yeah. Shame I missed him. So that's it for 13. I thought it interesting. Once he kills Basil, we no longer, the narrator no longer refers to him as Basil. He is now the thing, the dead man, the murdered man. It's just an inanimate object at this point, right?
And the painting changed immediately, right?
Yes.
It had blood dripping down the hands.
Blood on the hands. Exactly.
I got chills. And then he's going to call Alan Campbell at the end of 13. Yes.
Right. At the end of 13, he's like,
wants.
What do I do? I got to get in touch with Alan.
You don't want to be the guy that your friend calls when you murder someone. That's not who you want to be. No.
I mean, isn't that the cliche friendship thing? Like, we're such good friends, I'd help you bury the body. Right?
We shouldn't be friends then. I don't think.
You want a friend that'll help you bury the body, right?
There's back in my old life when I had did you ever meet my dog Kanoma? He was a Great Dane Weimaraner mix. Mike and I had him.
The real big one.
Yeah. So he was kind of a bad boy and would eat everything, and that would upset Mike and upset anyone. But I realized one day that I might be the person who would help somebody, my kid maybe, bury a body, because I came home and Kanoma had eaten the PS3 controller or PS4. I don't know what generation we were on then, but he had eaten it. And I was like, oh my God. Because the day after our wedding, we came home and Kanoma had chewed the top of his guitar, which it was like, Get him out. He's gone. Get him out. So I got the guitar fixed, but then he ate the controller and I was like, nope. I went to the store, fixed the controller. And it was like it never happened. And I literally never told him because I was so afraid Kanoma would get in trouble. Now, when it was all over, Mike kept Kanoma and they were like the best of best friends ever. This was at the very, very beginning. So Mike would totally forgive him now. And I don't even know if he knows that I totally helped him. I like stashed the controller in the packaging of the new one. And I was like, we will not tell anyone.
Oh my goodness.
So that was when I realized I might help my kid do something like that.
But
not a friend. Sorry, friends, all two of you. You're gonna have to talk to each other if you need that kind of help.
I think the kids have done stuff that I've fixed, but we always, they break plates, they break things, and you just, fix it, whatever. It's a thing. Who cares?
Yeah, but that's not important.
Yeah, I don't know. My kids have broken my stuff that I've then put off limits to them. And it's like I gotta like take a deep breath and go, all right, I still love these kids. It's all right. It's fine. It's a piece of plastic.
Those are daddy's ponies. Don't touch daddy's
exactly.
ponies.
Exactly. No, actually, they gave them to him. They can play with them.
Oh, you gave away your My Little Ponies.
I did. They have them now.
I broke stuff when we
Anyway.
were kids, when I was a kid, that you have replaced. Remember that the helicopter, that like G.I. Joe Tiger helicopter thing that you had?
You broke it?
Yeah, and you
No.
replaced
What?
like not that long ago. You replaced the propeller on the top. Like you still had it. I remember. You remember that?
I don't know. I don't remember that.
And like you would move the little red button on the side, and it would make the propeller go.
Yeah. You broke it?
I
I
did.
remember you breaking it. When my stuff comes out of storage, I will have to inspect it and see if you broke it.
I mean, I broke it when I was like 7, and then you fixed it.
Did I? Okay.
Yeah, you fixed it a couple years ago. I mean, maybe like 10 or 12, or who knows time
Really? Did
anymore. Yeah, you bought like a piece off eBay or something.
See, I don't remember these things. Drives my wife nuts, but yeah, I have zero memory. I'm Dorian Gray. All of my memories are
Where's your
locked in a
painting?
painting somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Wish I had one. That's how I stay young and beautiful. All right. Actually, it's a lot of water. Good eating, good living, exercise, and water. That's actually what
Hydrate.
does it, folks.
Hydrate,
Because
hydrate.
if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see how young and beautiful I am. I can still pass for maybe not anymore with the gray, but maybe late 20s. I'll give myself late 20s. All right. So now we get into chapter 14, and this is where we learn.
Late 20s? No, sir.
Yes.
Not
no.
with those gray curls.
That's
with
what I
those
said,
gray
not
curls.
with the gray. I would have to shave. If I shaved and actually got a haircut, well, I can't cut the
Maybe.
gray out anymore. I
Maybe
used to be
early
able to-
30s.
All right.
Not late
I used to be
20s.
able to cut the gray out. I used to tell my barber Foddy over in Jordan. I was like, Foddy, I come to you, man, because you cut the gray out. Like after I get my hair cut, the gray's gone. Yeah, a couple of years ago, it stopped. You can't cut the gray out anymore. Even shaving it close, oh, it's still there. Yep, there's still the gray. Oh, all right. Anyway, so now my picture is aging. We get to chapter 14, and we find, this is where I was talking about how I think the picture's taking on guilt. So after he's murdered Basil, the next morning, Dorian wakes up and he slept well. He was fine. I mean, he killed a man.
His chocolate.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
wakes up like little Prince.
His little hand under his pillow. Exactly. And so my guess is that he never has disturbing dreams. That the picture takes all of it on for him.
Does he
Wouldn't
dream
you
at
think?
all?
I don't know if he dreams. I think it says that he didn't have any dreams that night. So my assumption is he does dream. But the fact that he can kill a man and just be like, yeah, whatever, I'm good. He wasn't bothered by Sybil Vane's death. So yeah, I think the picture takes all this on for him.
Speaking of dreams, Vincent, last night, he sneaks in our bed every night, and he ends up sleeping with us, but he woke up at, I don't know what time.
That will end someday. It takes
God,
a long
thank God.
time, but it will end.
He woke up at like 4 a.m, and he was like, Mom, I had a dream. You were messing with my gummies. I was like,
Oh.
go back to sleep. I don't want your stupid gummies.
Don't mess with the kids' gummies, man.
He's like mad at me.
So Dorian wakes up, and here is, I think, we have a sort of a callback to Sybil Vane here. He winces at the memory of what he has suffered by killing
him.
Basil. It's all about him. So when Sybil Vane had a bad performance, it was because she was embarrassing him. And when she killed herself, it was, what has she done to him? And so now I had to kill Basil because of what he did to me.
So awful Basil made him do that.
Yes, it was terrible of Basil. What a jerk.
I mean, that's a classic villain move, though. Look what you made me do. It's like,
Right, exactly. So that's where we are now. We have this, we can come back to this one, but he mentions that there are sins that are better in the memory. I mean, we talk about that at the end. I was curious. I was trying to think of a sin that is better in the memory as opposed to doing it, because maybe killing someone with a knife is more fun if you think about it, but in the moment it kind of sucks. I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to get at there.
maybe like a night of like serious hard drinking where like actually you felt terrible and you threw up all night. But then you
But you
woke
only
up
remember
and
the
you're
good
like,
parts?
oh man, we had such a great party last night until I blacked out. I don't remember the rest.
I suppose that could be. You only remember the good parts. Selective memory. So then he writes to his friend Alan Campbell, and while his servant is off delivering the letter, he tries to do things, and he sits around, he's trying to read, he sketches, and all of his sketches come out looking like Basil, which is kind of weird. So, we do have maybe a little bit of guilt.
So don't draw a person. Draw something else.
Exactly.
Draw some flowers. They're like little flowers with Basil's face.
He was trying to draw. He's working on his, portraiture. Alan shows up, and we learn that Dorian and Alan were very close once. They were, best of friends. They were never separated for a period of 18 months. But with all of his relationships got soured, and sort of now, whenever they see each other, he says Dorian's the only one who smiles. Campbell wants nothing to do with him. We learn, again, Dorian's sort of self-centeredness. As he's talking about him or thinking about him, Alan's very clever, but his art appreciation, that all comes from Dorian. That's all me. I have this wonderful influence on my friend. He's also a chemist and a very good musician. But after his association with Dorian, now he hates music and he never plays anymore.
God, what could he have possibly done to rip the love of music out of someone?
Exactly. Which I think, which is a very good thing. Your imagination is always better than the reality. So I think it's kind of wise of Wilde to just sort of allude to these horrible things that Dorian has done to people without actually describing any, because
especially as a modern reader, because now we'll be like,
it's not so bad. Right. Well, yeah, exactly. We'll
who knows?
Who knows? So Alan, we learn, has then thrown himself into science, and he's an excellent chemist. And so now Dorian is waiting for Alan to show up, and he's kind of going crazy. He's starting to think these horrible things, maybe I've been found out, and they're gonna know, and he's going mad a little bit.
So he's paranoid for himself, not necessarily feeling guilty, although maybe guilt eats at us in a similar way. But if we think the picture takes on guilt, it's not taking away his paranoia. He's not cool, calm, and collected.
Moment.
Yeah.
Right. At least not in this moment. But Alan shows up, and as expected, he's kind of cold towards Dorian. He's like, what do you want, Gray? I thought I'd never see you again. And Dorian just comes out with it. He says, hey, man, look, there's a body up in my upper room. This dude killed himself. I need you to use your magic chemical powers and get rid of the body.
Yeah.
And and Alan is like, nah, I don't want to do this. And then Dorian says, okay, wait, actually, I killed him. I murdered him.
It was so quick.
It was so quick. It was boom.
It was suicide. I'm glad. You still refuse? Of course. I murdered him.
Please, you gotta help me.
A couple back and forth. He could have kept with the suicide part. I don't know why he thought the murder part would help him.
I don't know either. It's if I wasn't gonna help you because there's a suicided guy up in your room, I'm definitely not helping you hide evidence of a crime, man.
Dorian's like, but anyway. You don't know what he made me suffer. He painted a picture of me.
Yes.
That was a really good one.
But it looks bad now, and it's ugly. I don't like ugly things. Well, Dorian is pleading, but Alan says, no, I'm not going to do it. And I don't know why Alan hasn't left yet, by the way. But anyway.
Just leave, Alan. Although...
Well, while he was waiting, Dorian had written something and stuck it in his pocket. So now he writes another note and slips it over to Alan, who reads it. And basically Dorian has said, hey, I have this letter that I've already written. If you don't help me, I'm sending this letter. And this is, Alan just goes white, and he's just like, fine, what do you need me to do? So
and Alan's
he's got something.
He picks Alan because he's done this before. He's done autopsies, and he's done experiments.
Right.
I guess are legit scientific experiments using dead bodies. And he's like, it's nothing to you.
You won't get freaked out by a cadaver. Right.
Yeah.
So he's like, all right, well, I got to go get some things. And Dorian's like, no. Just write it down, and I'll send my guy to go get it. Which I don't know, Dorian. Now you're bringing a third person into this. Is not the wisest thing you've ever done, I don't think. But
You're just over at the house doing experiments. Well, go
yeah,
get your kit, your
and he
science
very
guy
much
kit.
he very much does this because when the stuff arrives, Dorian's like, oh good, there's a third person here. I'm a little braver now. He does very much the, hey Alan, this stuff for that experiment you're gonna do is all you got everything? Okay. It's like great alibi, Dorian. I thought you were like this experienced 2-decade sinner. Like you
Nope.
should be a little more suave by now.
He's hiding in plain sight. That's what he's learned.
Exactly. So interesting. Another point we can come back to, but it says that Dorian pities Alan. So I'm not exactly talking about that. And then Dorian says, hey, to his guy, wow, I need you to go down to our mansion in Selby and talk to the guy that does the flowers there and get double, but no white ones. And you know what? It's a nice day. Just take the rest of the day off. I'm sure you have stuff you want to do.
Yeah.
He's like,
You totally have to
okay.
talk to him about the orchids in person.
Right. Yep.
In person.
Yep. Exactly. So then he goes up and realizes he didn't cover the painting. So I wasn't clear here. Like it seemed like he didn't want to go in, but then he remembered that he hadn't covered the painting because he opens the door, peeks in, he sees the blood on the painting's hands, rushes in and throws the rug over the painting. Did Alan see the painting? I don't think we're explicit on whether or not Alan saw the painting. He at least saw Dorian like rushing in and throwing the thing over it, acting all weird, right?
I think so. Let's see how horrible it was. Dorian half opened the door. He saw the face of his portrait. I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't say.
It doesn't explicitly say if he saw the picture or not. But anyway, Alan says, look, get out of here. I got this. He does his work. A couple hours later, he comes downstairs very coldly. It's done. He leaves. And Basil Hallward is no more. Dorian goes up, looks in the room. He smells nitric acid, but the thing is gone from the desk.
There's a moment where he's like, wait, I wonder if Alan and Basil know each other.
Right.
But that doesn't seem that important. And he's like, and what they had thought of each other and if they'd ever met. I guess it doesn't matter because you told him you murdered someone. Who it is, I guess.
Doesn't matter?
Yeah. Like, hey, this is Basil. I know. Like,
okay.
I told you I killed someone, and that someone is...
Is it better to murder a famous painter, or... I don't know. Anyway. So my question then, this idea that Dorian pities Alan, is it because of... It's certainly not because of what he's asking him to do, right? He doesn't pity him because of that. It's got to be more because of this thing that Dorian is hanging over his head actually has an effect on him. Because Dorian sins, with no shame. And so if someone... And there are rumors flying about him. So if someone had this salacious rumor about Dorian and says, oh, do you know what Dorian Gray did? And says it, I don't think Dorian would care.
Mm-mm.
And the fact that Alan cares whatever this letter says, I think that's why Dorian pities him. He's like, oh, you are still bound by this convention of people's opinions of you. I would just do it and be like, yeah, I'd own it. I'd be like, sure, whatever, I did it.
Dorian's got a general air of condescension, though, about him over everything. Like
True.
everybody. Maybe not Lord Henry, although Lord Henry hasn't been around in a while. He doesn't show up to like the next chapter, which isn't on this particular discussion. But
right. We haven't seen Henry in any of these time jump chapters.
I mean, maybe he pities him because he doesn't understand what beauty is. And Alan rejects Dorian and whatever they did together. So clearly he's not as evolved as Dorian. He doesn't have any artistic interests until he meets Dorian. Now he doesn't even like music anymore.
Which he used to be good at.
Yeah, and so once Dorian has used the people that he's using, he probably looks at them like, ugh,
I was the only good thing in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And what a pity
now that
that
I'm out of
is.
it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm not in your life anymore, you're just this pathetic chemist that I need to do something for me. Yeah.
Have you seen the portrait, the picture of Dorian Gray in the Chicago Art Museum?
I have not.
Institute of, what's the Chicago Art Museum called? I was there last year in February. It was the last major outing I took.
I mean, the Field Museum's the big one, but that's not art specifically.
Here,
it's
look.
like
Can you see?
art and science museum. Oh, okay.
I mean, you could probably Google it, but for our viewers,
yes.
Hold on, my camera won't focus.
High quality sticking a phone up to a camera.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway,
this is quality video podcasting.
Google it. The Art Institute of Chicago. I saw it in person, and it was incredible.
And it's like old man Dorian, it seems, surrounded by sins. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
Well, let's see what's in the painting. There's like weird little faces in the wall, sure. And it's just like, if you look on his face, it's just disgusting. It's like, looks like it's covered in pox and blood, and he's balding, and his. Ugh.
Is there blood on his hands?
There is lots.
Oh, very
and
good.
there's. It looks like he's holding a razor. I can't tell what he's holding.
A knife, I would think, right?
And everything is just disgusting in the picture. It's all tainted. It's a really cool painting.
Yeah.
But like, even his clothes are destroyed and ripped and tattered, and everything about it.
Right.
Google it. I'll post it on Instagram at some point.
I will check it out, and I'll throw it up at the end of this video. So if you can't see a good shot of it, I'll put it up on the video here so you can see.
Nice.
And then we can throw it in the show notes as well. So if you're listening on the podcast, you can scroll down to the show notes and see the photo that we're discussing.
One thing I wanted to ask your opinion on, let me scroll back up to it, in that the section of my chapter full of French, which I can't speak French. And if those of you out there who can, I heartily apologize for my pronunciation. I tried really hard to look it up and to do it. And then I ended up with the full poem that's in there. I ended up just taking a bunch of internet translations and putting them together to something that I thought sounded really good, because I didn't think anybody's one translation was good enough. So I put a bunch together. And the last line that Dorian, it says, leaning back with half closed eyes, he kept saying over and over to himself, basically, before a facade of rose on a marbled staircase. The whole of Venice was in those two lines. Before a facade of rose on a marbled staircase. And I think that the poem is called Vanity, or it's about vanity. But why? What's so important about those two lines? And I'm wondering, like, the facade of rose, so like rose-colored glasses or whatever, like the ascent up the marble staircase to something that's better, be it social standing or the hedonism of life that he thinks is so enjoyable, is all just a rose-colored facade, and it's not as great as one would think.
It would doesn't it tie into his conception of beauty? Because, he mentions Venice and these other cities as them being like perfect romantic backdrops for beauty. Right? Like Venice is like this amazing setting for things to happen or for beautiful experiences, right?
And yet they're filled with just as much evil and debauchery as everything else. They're not
right, because I think he says
places.
Because doesn't he say something along the lines of, well, these cities in and of themselves aren't great, they suck just as much as London does because they have the same crap that London has, but they are the setting for, like, the backdrop. Like, they're this wonderful backdrop for the conception of beauty. Like along those lines.
All right. Why is he obsessed with it then?
Beauty? Right? I mean, aren't those things in and of themselves beautiful? I mean, roses, marble, those are generally accepted standards of beauty, right? Like if you have a marbled staircase in a home, that's very opulent, or in a building or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's he thinks the lines of the poem are exquisite, and then Wilde, I mean, writes beautifully of what he's thinking of floating down the green waterways of the pink and pearl city in a black gondola with a silver prow trailing curtains, and then opal and iris throated birds fluttering around, and it's this very beautiful ornate scene that he's obsessed with. He's just obsessed with beauty at
right.
And then the idea that he wants to use...
And his own beauty more specifically.
So going back to the idea that he was using evil as a way to conceptualize, or to what is it? Simply as a mode through which he could realize his conception of the beautiful.
Right.
And he himself is the most beautiful thing to himself. And he's doing all of these evil things. Is he almost daring it to do something to him? Or is he like, is he trying to, he's doing all these evil things. He is obsessed with beauty, himself being the most beautiful thing in and of itself. And then he's staring at himself and at the painting, and I don't know. I feel like there's something there.
Realizing that he's not, like, is he trying to mesh the two images of himself? Because it says, like, he'll stand by the painting with a mirror in his hand, and he'll look at the mirror, and then he'll look at the painting, and he'll look at the mirror, you know, kind of going back and forth, seeing these two extremes of himself.
Does he feel like he's, I don't know if this is true, but does he, I mean, he's growing more in love with himself, I think, more vain as time passes, and he becomes obsessed with his own beauty. I don't know if he believes he's growing more beautiful as the painting grows more ugly, but maybe he's looking at the effects of the evil on his beauty because he's not taking it on, and therefore
fascinates him more.
Yeah. I feel like there's something deeper there that I can't quite. We need more people. Why is nobody on Twitch talking about this with us? I need more thoughts to be spurred here, because I feel like there's something so on the edge of what this evil as a mode through which he can realize his conception of beauty, and then this idea of a rose facade and all of it.
Well, this is a great chance for listeners to chime in and let us know. You can tell us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, via email,
Help
but
me out,
only
people.
Forever 25. Yeah, what do you think about looking at beauty through evil, or using evil to conceptualize beauty? Let us know.
Yeah, I need some help, people.
Yeah, I'm the dumb one, remember? And if she can't figure it out, then we're both stuck. All right. Any other notes you want to bring up from this section, Mare?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We didn't talk about the only other passage I had sort of highlighted was the sins that are better in memory. So the full quote is, "There were sins whose fascination was more in the memory than in the doing of them. Strange triumphs that gratified the pride more than the passions, and gave to the intellect a quickened sense of joy, greater than any joy they brought, or could ever bring, to the senses." So is it more like sort of I did that pride? Like, it kind of sucks when you're doing it, But when you're done, you've checked the box and you can say, yeah, I did that. And you're kind of proud of having done this thing.
Kind of like, so I'm wondering, like, looking back on giving birth is way more fascinating than actually doing it. In the moment, I'm like, this is horrible. This is actually horrible and painful and very, very messy. But then in the memory, I'm absolutely fascinated by me and anybody else who can do such a thing and survive, like being ripped apart. But maybe it's like what, like if, you know, murder shows are real popular, like murderers take like little mementos and tokens and they think on the things that they've done. And they remember, you know, they remember them and they're fascinated by them. And so it's also, it could be like, I can't believe I did this. Like, man, I did that. Like, I think you're right. Like that pride of like, whoa.
But pride in a sin, because, you know, at school we used to say that it was a terrible place to be, but a great place to be from, right? So like the experience, but those experiences, giving birth or, you know, going through the military or school, I mean, those are positive experiences. Those are not, I mean, those are kind of morally good, right? They're not negative experiences. So, you know, murdering someone and then looking back and going, yeah, I did that. I mean, it's a little different.
There's also like the element of well, the element of like, I mean, Dorian's obviously gone to the extreme, but the element of the I'm not supposed to, or it's taboo, or I was told I'm not allowed, or it's literally like one of the rules. Like most people, even if you're not religious or if you share very different religions, don't kill other people is usually a part of the code.
It's generally, unless you're like a Sith or something. Right. I mean, it's generally a part of the religion.
And so maybe there's the fascination for Dorian in that. And he's done lots of other things, which he clearly fascinates himself over. But like super low key, like getting a tattoo can be a taboo. Like some people are like, oh, I would never do that.
Sure.
And then you get one and you get the adrenaline rush and you're like, I have control over my own body and I can do what I want. I can't believe I did that. That was amazing. At least that's how I feel. And then some people look at you and they're like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this because you just have one and you're not a woman, but like random people touch me and have always like felt like they can, and they'll like grab my arm at the grocery. Well, not anymore because it's been a year since strangers have tried to, but like I remember like feeling like I was being assaulted at my university. A woman just grabbed me literally and I like spun and she's like, why would you do that to yourself? And I was like, good day. Nice to meet you. And you are? She's like, oh, I could never. I'm like,
okay.
Nobody asked you. Please don't touch me.
Yeah.
I have to go to class. And she kind of like clucked at me and went away. And it wasn't like she was like an elderly woman. She was like middle-aged.
What?
But I've had plenty of people just touch me and be fascinated. And I'm like, it's flowers and a fairy. Get over it. It's not, you know.
Yeah.
But the I don't know. I can't compare it. I've never done anything so morally abject. Never murdered anyone. I don't plan on it. I'm not obsessed by the idea of it, but maybe that's it. Like he can't, like, because he doesn't seem to really have thought much about killing Basil. He just does it.
No, he just does it. Right.
So there is no ruminating on what it would be like, and I don't even know if he's ever thought of killing anyone before. The book doesn't say. Like, it's not something like him and Alan haven't been hiding bodies for years. No. You know?
And he is fascinated with sin. You would think that, I mean, that's sort of the ultimate level, right? You're taking another life. I mean, would he have gotten to that point organically had the opportunity not presented itself? Like, would he just have wanted to do it? And I think the point that he got to, 2 decades of just kind of in the moment, whatever he wanted to do, he did. It didn't matter. So when the sudden impulse to kill Basil struck, like he took it. Like there was no hesitation. I don't have to think about this. Like I've been doing whatever I've wanted to do for 20 years. I'm just going to do this as well.
And it said it like hate came over him. Like he hated Basil in that moment.
Right.
Because Basil wanted to, he's like, we can fix this. Let's get down on our knees right now. Let's get forgiveness. Let's figure out a prayer. But it wasn't like he was like, you get down and pray. He was including himself in it. Right. Basil was taking a lot more blame than was necessary. Poor guy.
Right.
And then he hates him.
He mentions that his worship of Dorian has corrupted and destroyed him. Yeah. And that's kind of one of the things that he mentions.
Yeah, and Dorian doesn't disagree. He says that the things that I have suffered because of him. Like he basically, I think he's blaming Basil for everything. Basil creating this image. Yeah.
Which he then loved so much that he wanted to remain beautiful so that he would always look like this.
But it's Dorian's like Basil didn't set him down the path of sinning. Like he could have remained beautiful forever and he wouldn't have aged, and he could have gone down the road of philanthropy, which he was on with Lady Agatha at the beginning of the book. But he makes a conscious decision not to do that because
that's Henry's influence.
It'll get old. Yeah, so the two of them destroy Dorian because apparently he had no personality for himself.
Right. He didn't. He was a 17-year-old kid. He doesn't know who he is yet. There's a quote Basil has that he says in that moment when he's trying to get Dorian to beg for forgiveness. He says, I worshipped you too much. I am punished for it. You worshipped yourself too much. We are both punished. So,
and Dorian's like, no, we're not. Basically.
You are. Yeah, exactly. So Basil was at least recognizing his culpability in this, what has happened to Dorian. Like he's taking a little responsibility here.
And I feel like Dorian can't accept that. Like that's an aberration to Dorian.
Right. Exactly.
Because then he would have to really actually remember and reckon and feel in order to actually ask for forgiveness of anyone or anything and actually be forgiven, you have to come to grips with the things that you have done and actually feel remorse and the need to be forgiven.
Right. Yeah. Before you ask for forgiveness, you have to know that and feel that what you have done is wrong. If you don't, then you're not going to, I have nothing to be forgiven for. I don't feel like I've done anything wrong.
Yeah, then you're just saying words that you don't mean and then you're not. And Dorian doesn't want to think about those things. He wants to sip his chocolate after waking up like a cherub.
I want someone to bring me chocolate in the morning. That sounds delightful.
Your kids would do it if you asked them to.
They probably would. I bet they would. I'll have to do that. That's the nice thing about having kids that are old enough to do stuff. You can tell them, hey, why don't you do this for me? And they will. It's awesome.
I remember when I was little enough to like get cereal on my own, and Dad was sick and in bed, and I would bring him Cheerios, and like I'd bring him breakfast in bed, like a bowl of Cheerios, and it was the only thing I could do. A couple years ago, I don't know, 10 years ago, we were talking about that, and Dad said to me, I wouldn't have eaten that day if you hadn't brought it till your mom got home. I couldn't get out of bed.
Oh wow!
I was like, what?
There you go. Hey.
I don't even think he asked for it.
No, I'm sure not. Yeah.
Hey, go get me a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, right. See,
you were at school, Mom was at work, and I was like I don't even think I was in kindergarten yet. I was like 4.
And I get yelled at all the time because I tell the kids to get me stuff.
Well, you aren't bedridden with horrific arthritis.
No, I'm not. But
I know I heard.
As I texted her this morning, there was an article on NPR this morning on the website that says that I'm actually a good parent for doing that by giving my children menial tasks to do.
It said, "Dear Kyle David."
Yes, it
did.
Are a good parent. I'm actually teaching them to be responsible and to work together. And so I'm making them better children by telling them to get me a drink when I'm sitting on the couch.
I'm like, Vincent, go get mommy's phone. And then he's like, okay. And then he's like, can I use it? No, you
No.
can't. This is
You're
for mommy.
actually, you're making your children more helpful and better citizens by letting them do things for you. So, just doing my part to better society. All right, so I think that pretty much wraps up this section of Picture of Dorian Gray, the Picture of Dorian Gray. For next time, we are going to finish the book. So that is chapters 15 through 20, and we'll finish that off. And please let us know what you're thinking of this book. This is our 7th book, I believe it is. 7th or something like that. Mm. So you can hit us up on social media. We're all over. We are on Twitter, Instagram, the Facebook, all at CYST Pod. We're on YouTube, where you can see these discussion episodes in all of their wonderful video glory. So just search Classics You Slept Through on YouTube, or check the show notes, and you can hit our YouTube link down there. Please, if you're enjoying the podcast, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It lets us know how we're doing, and it helps other people find the show. And lastly, it is now March, and it's warming up, so that means track tryouts are coming soon. I'm excited.
Peace.